are here at the CCA Workbench, and it's time for the Academy Sports and Outdoors Rigs and Techniques. Dave, you've had 6 months to actually think about your job over here at the Workbench. So what do you got for me tonight when it talks about Cobia's rigs?
Put the pressure on me, man. Why not?
No pressure.
Well, spring is time, is cobia time all through Florida. I mean, we can catch them year round on the wrecks. They're a wreck fish. They like to hang around a deep wreck. Most of the time, wrecks and reefs and whatnot. It's only during the spring that we get that big migration where they'll come in close to shore and follow the shoreline. Panhandle of Florida, where Patty's from, is probably the most famous in Florida. Guys come from all over the country. They got great big ones there. They get over 100 pounds quite regularly. You used to.
That's a big
quite
one.
often. And in numbers, I remember distinctly one day, me and my dad had like 17 up behind the boat.
Wow.
One day, we didn't even catch one.
What?
They had just shut. They would not eat anything. I had live baits and jigs and squid and dead things, and they wouldn't eat anything behind my boat that day, which was, I actually had a guy go overboard. But, it was a bad day. But, sometimes cobia are like that. They're a very curious fish, and a lot of cobia stories start with, he just swam right up to the boat. Because they'll be somewhere down there bottom fishing, or they'll catch a fish and stop and be getting their lures together, and all of a sudden, here he comes. Well, the reason he does that is the cobia is object. He likes to be oriented. He's object oriented. He likes to be around other things. Those big bull sharks, a whale, any kind of like one of those big whales with they eat plankton. The whale shark. They're always around whale sharks. If you see a whale shark, you're going to see cobias on it. Any of those great big things that are moving through the water, a big buoy sometimes will hold them. And so when your boat pulls up to a reef or a wreck and you're messing around getting stuff ready, half the time those cobias will just come straight up to the boat. They don't wait for you even to drop a bait. And a lot of times they'll start pecking at stuff and you start catching bottom fish, or you're trying to catch bait. You'll catch cobias doing that too. But the main thing like a lot of guys like to do is sight fish for them, and that's when you're starting to use the jigs and some of the artificial stuff. Here on the east coast of Florida, springtime right now, the manta rays are coming inshore. We got a place out there at Canaveral called the Shoals. It's a shallow area. Looks much like the same kind of bottom kind of structure, shallow water over sand that's in the Panhandle. And for some reason, the cobia like to come through there and they pop up, and we can see them. If the wind's coming into their face, they'll go down, and it's harder to see them. If the wind's at their back, pushing them along, they'll pop right up to the top, and that's how we determine where they're going to be up in the Panhandle. The gear you want to use a long spinning reel, a long spinning rod, 8 feet, something that can make a long cast. Especially these days, the way the fish are pressured, because everybody likes to catch these things to eat them. So a lot of guys are out there chasing them, and if you're throwing right at them and hitting them in the head with it, you might not get a bite sometimes. So you got to be a long way away from them. Try to make a long cast about 3 or 4 feet in front of the fish. And once you see them start to tail downwards towards that jig, you pay real close attention to that line. And if it nicks, gets that little bump, or it starts to speed up, just close the bail and start to wind.
So what action do you like your Fenwick rod to have, Dave?
Well, I like a pretty loose tip so that I can make a long cast, but a heavy butt section, because all cobia fight hard. Even the little fellas, they don't give up.
Right.
I don't know why that is versus another fish, but some fish just fight harder than others, and the cobia is known for putting up quite a battle like a jack, but he's not a jack fish. As a matter of fact, the cobia's only living relative is a remora.
What size, a remora, so what size line would you like to use, like this diamond?
Well, for braid, I'm probably going to use anywhere between
30 to 40,
30 to 60 even. Depending on where you are up in the Panhandle, you can get away with using 60-pound braid because you might run into a monster.
Yeah.
But the majority of fish you should be able to catch easily on 30-pound braid, because you're usually fishing in an area when you're doing the sight fishing that they don't have a whole lot of stuff to break off on, and the water's relatively shallow.
So tell me about the presentation. You see your cobia swimming down the beach, swimming behind the bull shark, swimming behind whatever.
Right.
What are we going to do, Bubba?
Well, you want to figure out which way that fish is going, obviously, and then we want to turn around and get parallel to it. You want to be slightly in front of it and parallel. and then cast in front of the fish. I've made the mistake of bombing them quite a few times.
Hit them on the head.
Yeah,
no
with
good.
the bait or the or a big jig. You definitely don't want that. And a live bait. If you go through a progression, usually, up in the panhandle, a lot of guys will throw an eel first, or they'll like to throw that pinfish first, or they'll like to throw a mullet first, and then they'll throw a jig. And then there's other guys who are, just sold on the jig thing, and they just want to throw a jig all the time. But if you have a variety, it's always good to have a variety, because as you'll hear these guys say, oh, they're usually not that picky. Sometimes they can be really picky.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is, but I don't know if it's the water temperature of those days or what.
And if you're live bait fishing, what kind of hook you got?
I like to use just a live bait hook, but a pretty stout one. This is not the time to use light wire. Use the double, triple X. These are great for eels, these little small ones like this. If you're using a bigger mullet or something, you want to make sure you have plenty of hook sticking out. I use maybe one of those Circle C's. I like to use
big Circle C.
Yeah, I like to use a pretty good size circle hook, because for one thing they can't bend it out,
right.
And if he swallows that bait, which is we're hoping he's going to do, if he swallows that bait down and that big circle hook comes to the corner of his mouth, he's done. He's pinned. He's probably not going to come off unless you do something really dumb.
So
I've done that. But.
All right, real quick, got 15 seconds. When we go to gaff him,
oh yeah,
what's the most important part? I learned this from you years ago.
Make sure you have a place to put him before you put the gaff in him, and you tell everybody where he's going. The hole is open, and here we go.
Right.
Don't.
It's all one motion.
Yeah, there ain't no playing and hitting him in the head or any of that crap. You put him on the ice and close the door and run away.
Right.
Because he's going to go crazy.
Clear the deck, Brie.
Clear the deck.
Where are we going next?